Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. Amen. This morning, what to expect when God changes your name. What to expect when God changes your name. How many would agree that names are important? Names are important. When I had my children, what I named them was important. I wanted their names to be something that it just sounded important. I wanted it to look good and sound good on their desk or their door to their office. So my first child was named with this in mind. Also, he was named after his father. He was named after his father. He'll tell you something different. But my first child was named with this in mind: Attorney Brandon Lee Gilchrist. That had a nice ring to it. When I named my second child, I had this in mind: Dr. Drake Elmon Gilchrist. Names are important. Zainab, by the elders of the family. Children are given names with a purpose and a meaning that directs them towards their destiny. In the African tradition, children become their names. Children take on the character of the name that was given to them, because names are important. In the Jewish tradition, children are not named until, I believe it's 8 days after they are born. Names are thought out because names are important. Let me ask this. How did you come up with the names for your children? How did you come up with the Jerry and Ketch? How did you come up with those names? It wasn't easy. Serendipity. That's what you wanted, Ketch. Okay, but okay, I'm sure Jerry overruled that. It took a long time for you to determine what the names of your children will be, and you have a set of twins. So, I mean, trying to figure out what the twins, Ray and Peter, how did you come up with the names of your children?
Peter named our firstborn while I was still out cold, and he named him after his father, Peter.
While you were out cold, Peter just went on and named him. It didn't have a middle name. He's PJ, but you just went on and named him while she was out cold. If you can recall. Names are important. We have to think about names have meaning. Names are important. In the setting of our text this morning, we have a story about a man whose name was Jacob, who experienced a name change. Jacob didn't just receive a name change, but he experienced a name change. Who was this Jacob? Why was he important? And why is his story important to us today? Who was Jacob? Jacob is described as a cheat and a trickster in Genesis chapter 27, I believe. The story goes like this. Jacob had tricked his father into giving him a blessing that was intended for his older twin brother Esau. Jacob's father, Isaac, you see, couldn't see very well. And Isaac, if you might recall, Isaac was Abraham's son who he was going to sacrifice in the Genesis story. And in the story, Isaac was spared from being sacrificed because God provided a ram in the bush when he saw Abraham's faith. In our story, today, Isaac has sent his son Esau out out to hunt some game and make some stew for him. Esau was the older twin. Esau came out first, so he was the older son. While Esau was away, Jacob came in with some stew and pretended to be Esau. He was kind of pushed by his mother, you see, in the story. Jacob knew that Esau was a hairy fella. So he took some goat skin and put it on his hand and on the back of his neck, just in case his father wanted to touch him, he would feel like his hairy brother Esau. When Jacob came with the stew, Isaac wanted to make sure now it was Esau because Esau was hairy. Isaac called Jacob up to him and felt him to be sure that the goat skin did trick him. Basically, Jacob came in and he wanted to trick his father, but Isaac had to make sure. So Isaac calls Jacob up, and what happens is he's tricked. Isaac is tricked by Jacob because he is hairy, because he's put this goat skin on his body in order to trick his father. Even though the voice was that of Jacob, the father accepted that it was Esau and not Jacob. Jacob had pulled it off. He had tricked his father, and the father blessed Jacob. You see, that blessing was important. The blessing of the firstborn child. Not to say that the other children weren't blessed, but the blessing of that firstborn child was something different. It was special, and it should have gone to the firstborn child. When Esau found out that Jacob had stole the blessing that was to come to him by his father because he was the firstborn, he became very angry, and Jacob had to run for his life. Here in our text this morning, several years have passed and Jacob was returning home. He knew that he would see Esau again, and he was nervous. He wasn't sure how Esau would react. He wasn't sure if his brother would still be mad. He wasn't sure if Esau would try to kill him. It was at this time in the story that Jacob had an encounter with God that would change the rest of his life. Jacob had a name change from cheater to Israel, meaning one who is triumphant with God. Now, I'm sure Jacob wasn't expecting the struggle he was getting ready to encounter, but he went through a struggle in order to become a better Jacob. So, what can we learn from this story this morning? We can learn what to expect when God changes your name, meaning when God molds you into something better. So what can we expect when God changes us? We can expect struggle within. We can expect a struggle that takes time because change takes time. Jacob had to struggle for his change. It didn't come instantaneously. Change involves a struggle. Change doesn't feel good. Change is uncomfortable. Change can leave you with a limp. Changing from something old to something new means something has to be left behind. Because what used to be no longer fits where you're going. Who has experienced a change in their life that was difficult, that you struggled with? Maybe a change in location. You moved from one city to a new city, or you moved from one home to a new home. Maybe you had a change in your job. Maybe you moved from one position to a new position or a new office. Children have a difficult time when they have to change schools. moving from, preschool to kindergarten, from elementary to junior high, from junior high to high school. Change is not easy. Change causes a struggle to happen within. Why would God change your name? To move you into the next phase of your destiny. Because life is filled with seasons. We move in life from, we move in seasons in our life. We move from being an infant to a toddler. We move from being a toddler to early childhood or middle childhood or adolescence. Life is filled with seasons. We move from early adulthood to mature adulthood to old age. Life is filled with seasons. In every shift, we gain knowledge and more wisdom that we take with us to the next shift in the season of our life. Jacob experienced a shift in his life. Jacob experienced a change of season in his life. He was no longer the Jacob that he used to be, a cheater and a trickster. For God did a shift within Jacob. God changed who Jacob would now represent. God changed how Jacob would look. For now Jacob had a limp to remind him of what it took for him to change and enter into his next level in life. Jacob had a limp to remind him of the struggle it took to become a better person, a better Jacob. I don't care what area of life you want to change. It's going to take some struggle because it's going to take you changing who? You. Jacob had a name change. Jacob was now Israel. Jacob had a name change. Jacob now had another purpose to fulfill. God has a purpose for all of us. We are not just here because we are here. We all have a purpose of being here. We all have a role in the destiny of this church. We just recently at North Stamford experienced a name change because we have another purpose to fulfill within the destiny of this church. We are no longer North Stamford Congregational Church. We are now North Stamford Community Church. Why? Because God is bringing this church into the next phase of its destiny. Yes, some of us are limping along the way because change brings struggle. Change brings resistance. But in the change and in the struggle, God brings forth transformation and growth. Jacob was changed into a new Jacob, but he had to go through the struggle. He had to want change. Jacob in the story held on to the presence of God and said, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. Jacob held on to the presence of God and said, I'm not going to let you go until you change me into a better me. Have you allowed God to change your name? Or are you stuck in the old you? Have you made progress in your life? Have you been open to new experiences? Or are you stuck in an old mindset, resisting where God is trying to take you? Are you holding on so much to the old that you are hindering the progress of God bringing you into the new? Jacob no longer wanted to be where he was. He wanted to change. He wanted to be better. So he held on to change and said, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. God is a God of change. God is a God of shifts. God is a God of cycles. God is a God of seasons. God is a God of progress. God is a God of new levels. God is not stagnant. God is a God of growth and newness. God is a God of life for life moves on. Life does not stay in the same place. Jacob didn't want to stay in the same place that he was. He wanted change. And he wasn't going to let his change go until it happened. What are you willing to hold on to God for until it happens? What are you willing to hold on to God for until your change comes? Jacob held on to God until God did what he needed him to do within him and within his life. What to expect? When God changes your name, expect a shift in your very being. What are you willing to hold on to until God you're mending or rekindling or building a relationship isn't personal. Expect change. Expect to be changed in your thinking. Expect to be changed in your talk. Expect to be changed in your heart. Expect to be changed in your desires. Expect to be changed in your behavior. Expect to be changed in your habits. What to expect? When God changes your name, expect to be changed.